Hello, welcome to Escape the Box Piano. I'm Dan. Let's talk about reading music. The ability to read notated music is a great skill to have. If music is a story, then the more comfortable you are with reading it, the better you can tell that story. In my opinion, learning to read notated music sits side by side with learning to play by ear. Both are equally great skills to have. If you can listen to a song and then play it, that is awesome. If you can also read notated music, you can play songs you never even heard in the first place. Plus, if you're doing any kind of music exam, be it ARCT, RCM, ABRSM or Trinity or any of those other boards, there's a high likelihood you are going to have to do some sight reading. So I'm going to share with you my methodology to ensure that you get the best result you can. Let's look at the 10 things you need to do to get better at sight reading. Number 1. Know the notes. That might sound completely obvious, but you need a starting point, and the starting point is knowing your A, B, C, D, E, F, G, knowing where those note heads sit in the staff, both in the bass clef and the treble clef. In the earlier grades, probably you need to be proficient up to about one ledger line above and below the staff. I'd say in the medium grades, you need to start being a bit more proficient, knowing notes on and above or below 2 ledger lines above and below the staff. Now there's plenty of ways you can upskill yourself in learning to read notes. For example, there's a couple of really good mnemonics that you may have come across already. Face in the space, take those letters F, A, C, E and just think face in the space, and that works for the treble clef. The notes F, A, C, E sit bottom to top in the 4 spaces in the staff in the treble clef. Another one for the bass clef is all cows eat grass. Think again, the first letter of each of those words. A, all, cows, C, E, eat, and then G, grass. A, C, E, G. Again, bottom to top, the spaces in the staff of the bass clef, A, C, E, G. That helps you quickly position any of the notes that you might be getting in the staff without laboriously counting up or down, for example, from middle C, which can be time consuming, time that you don't have when you're doing sight reading in an exam. Another great thing that you can do is go onto your app store on your phone, download any number of music flashcard apps that are going to flash up on screen a note. You're going to have to identify what it is within a time limit. It's a great way of gamifying the whole thing. A little bit of practice every day and you're just going to get more and more fluent at reading the notes. Number 2, relax. Okay, you know the situation. You're in an exam, the sight reading's about to happen, the examiner's coming over, they're going to put a piece of music in front of you, you know you've got about 30 seconds to look at that piece of music, and the first reaction that you have is panic. When you panic, you get that kind of white fuzziness in front of your eyes. You are no good to yourself at this point. You have to slow your heart rate down and so that you can concentrate and focus. So do some good, meditation techniques, take a deep breath. Hold it and let it out slowly and slow your heart rate down. Okay, now you're ready to begin. Number 3, identify the clefs. You're sat there, the sight reading is now in front of you. Let's go through a process where we can break down what we're looking at and make it easy to handle. We're going to read left to right. The first thing that we see are the clefs. 99% of the time it's going to be treble clef on the top staff, bass clef on the bottom staff, but not always. Don't get fooled in case you've got 2 bass clefs or 2 treble clefs. This gives you a strong idea of the geography of where you're going to be playing. If you've got 2 treble clefs, you're going to think, okay, my left hand is going to be a little bit higher up. If you've got 2 bass clefs, it's not impossible. You're thinking, okay, my right hand is going to be kind of middle C below in that kind of geography of the keyboard. Get that right from the start. Number 4, identify the key signature. What happens immediately after the clefs? Of course, it's the key signature. Now you could get lucky. There could be no sharps or flats, C major or A minor. I think in the lower grades you can expect maybe up to 1 or 2 sharps or flats, and then by the time you get through to the medium grades you might have 3 or 4 sharps or flats. Now if you've practiced your scales, that's going to give you a really good idea of what it feels like, the geography under your hands, those kind of hills and valleys where your fingers go over the white keys and then the black keys. And when you see the sharps or flats, that should give you an idea of what this piece is going to feel like. And of course, you also need to think about major and minor. Let's think about emotion now. Major, we associate with happy music, minor, kind of sad, somber kind of stuff. How do you know what the key signature is? Is it major or minor? Because one key signature could be either of those two things. Every major key signature has a relative minor. Okay, a good way of identifying it is, let's say we've got no sharps or flats in the key signature. Look at the first and last notes of the piece in the bass clef. That's usually a really good identifier. If it's C major, there's a strong chance you're going to have C in the bass at the beginning and or at the end. If it's A minor, it's a good chance you're going to have A in the bass at the beginning or the end. With C major or any major key, it's less likely that you're going to see accidentals, that's extra sharps and flats, written into the music. Not impossible, but less likely. In a minor key, it's more likely that you're going to have one or two or more accidentals written into the music in addition to the key signature. Number 5, identify the time signature. All right, we're about halfway through now. Okay, immediately after the key signature, you've got the time signature. In the lower grades, this is probably going to be 2/4, 3/4, or 4/4, simple time. In the medium grades, you might have compound time coming in, 6/8, 9/8, 12/8. Obviously, you know that that top number is the important one. It tells you how many beats there are in the bar. You need to be able to count. Let's say you're in a simple time signature, 4/4. The minute you read the number, start counting. Think in your head a speed. It doesn't have to be the speed that's suggested on the piece. Let's think about that later. Just get a steady counting in your head. And as you're doing that, look at some of the note values in the piece. Look at your quarter notes, your half notes, your whole notes, your eighth notes, and imagine what those notes feel like against what you're counting. And also look and see if there's any dotted rhythms. So if there's some dotted rhythms, you've got to be thinking that you're going to be playing a certain amount of syncopation, so that's notes that happen in between the counting. Number 6, find your starting notes. Okay, this is a relatively quick one, but we're going to do this for both hands. Look at the top staff, which is probably going to be your right hand, and it's probably going to be the treble clef. Find your first note. Might not be the first note of the piece. That might happen in the left hand. Wherever the first note is in the top staff, find it. There's probably going to be a number attached to it as well, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, which is going to be equivalent to one of the digits of your hand. Find the note on the piano keyboard, put the correct finger on that note. Now just hold it there, don't do anything with it, and do exactly the same for the left hand. Find your starting note, the first note that happens in the lower staff, probably the bass clef. Find the note on the piano keyboard, the finger that you're going to play it with, and put your hand there. That's number 6. Number 7, play through the right hand only. Okay, you've got both hands in position. Keep them there. Don't move the left hand, just keep it in position, but you're only at this point going to play the right hand, and just play it to the best of your ability all the way through. Give yourself an empty bar in your head of that counting that you were doing a couple of steps ago. Count and then start playing through the notes and try and make the rhythms and pitches of the notes as accurate as you possibly can. Try not to stop, try not to get stuck and get into a loop of repeating yourself again and again to get one little bit right. Remember, you are time pressured to get through this, so try and do that continuous beginning to end performance. Number 8, play the left hand only. Okay, you've finished playing the right hand. Put your right hand back in its starting position where you were a couple of steps ago. We're going to do exactly the same thing now. You're going to play through the left hand part by itself. Number 9, play both hands together. All right, it's crunch time. You played both hands separately. Hopefully you got some time left. At this point, just play both hands together. Again, start to finish. Try not to get stuck in a loop of doing one little bit and repeating itself. You need to try and get all the way through from start to finish. And at this point, having played the right hand and the left hand previously, you've got some idea now in your head of what they both sound like or what you think they should sound like. And this is a matter now of trying to get those hands to lock together. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. Which hand plays when, and get the timing of those two things as good as you possibly can. Number 10, add in articulation, dynamics, and speed. If you have some time left over, and you may well not, the examiner may well have stopped you at this point and be telling you, okay, they want a playthrough. But if you manage to play through all the way through and you've got some time left over, have a look at the suggested speed, which is going to be at the beginning of the piece, probably one of those Italian expressions, and have a look at the dynamics. So is this supposed to be loud? Is this supposed to be soft? And maybe have a look at some of the articulation. Have you got any staccato? Are there some phrase marks anywhere in the piece? If you can and you have time, do another performance to yourself before you get stopped by the examiner and try and add in some of that final detail. So there you have it. That's my methodology. That is my process for trying to get the best results that you possibly can from sight reading. It takes an entire piece of music which can feel really daunting and breaks it down into little steps that feel perhaps a little bit more manageable. With that said, I'm going to give you one more step, and this isn't really a step of the process, so I think I get away with this, but number 11. Number 11, practice. As with anything in life, practice makes perfect. I think there is little point going into an exam situation and trying to do some sight reading if you've never done sight reading before. Now you might say, well, everything that I do is sight reading. The pieces that I learn are sight reading, but think about this. Really, a piece that you read is only 100% sight reading the very first time you ever read it. Every subsequent time you read that piece of music, some of that is coming from memory, and the pieces that you learn for your exam to play, the performance pieces, the more and more you practice them and read them, the more and more percentage of that is coming from your memory rather from the notation on the sheet music in front of you. To the point probably where by the exam it's really there as a comfort blanket and you could probably take the sheet music away and play that piece of music. So really, you haven't been practicing sight reading if you've only been doing those performance pieces. The good news is pretty much all the exam boards produce books with sight reading tests. For example, this is an ABRSM book. I think it's got about 55 different pieces of sight reading. I recommend you pick up a sight reading book and make it your mission to get stuck into practicing these. So for example, if you pick up a book such as this, which has got 55 exercises in it, and you do one of them a day, that's 55 days worth of practice. Now, you don't have to stick to the rules that are going to be set out for you in the exam. In fact, might benefit you with to start with in your practice of sight reading to spend a little bit more time on each of the exercises. Maybe spend 10 minutes on one piece at the beginning, just going through, really learning it. So by the end of having learned it, it really isn't sight reading anymore. And if you've got somebody else in your house that can play music more proficiently than you, maybe you can get them to help after you've had your best shot at it. Get them to play what it should sound like or what they think it should sound like, and you can kind of validate what you did against that person's performance. As you progress through the days, through the weeks of your sight reading, try and make things a little bit more pressured for yourself, reduce the amount of time that you are allowing yourself to do these exercises. And remember, once you've done an exercise, it's not really sight reading anymore. You've burnt that exercise. So go on to the next one, go on to the next one day by day, and improve in that way. Well, I hope you found this video useful. If you are here, I guess you were here to look for hints and tips on making sight reading easier for yourself. High probability that you may be studying for an exam, in which case best of luck when you get to it. And I hope to see you on the channel again in the future.